Hey there everybody, this is Robin with Creative2xmom, and today's video is going to be what I read in the month of January. So welcome back to my channel. My name is Robin and this is Creative2xmom. This channel is all about homeschooling, parenthood, and thriving in the day-to-day. Or in the case of today's video, really good books. Each month I publish a video like this one at the end of the month, sharing with you the books that I read personally, as well as the books that we did as read-alouds in our homeschool. I have a 7th grader and 4th grader, and I love sharing classical books with them. So let's start with the books that I read this month. The first book that I read was The Call of the Wild and Free. Now this was a reread for me. I have it on my Kindle, but this is one of those books that I feel I need to revisit and revisit often. My natural inclination is to be a very type A, structured homeschooler, the fill in the blanks, but there's something about Wild and Free that really calls to me. I grew up in a small town and grew up being outside in nature, grew up exploring and just being very comfortable in that realm. So as structured as I am, there's something about that wild and free philosophy that I would really love to instill with my kids. And so for that reason, we do a lot of hiking, we do a lot of nature exploring. So this is the second time I've read that book. This is one of those books that I come back to for a little bit of inspiration here and there when I feel like I am getting too structured, too in my head, too in the rat race of testing and grades, and I just need to take us back to that wholesomeness, to that outside world, helping them get comfortable in nature, helping them get comfortable in the outdoors. I think homeschool is a lot simpler than I choose to make it at times, so this is one of those books that sort of brings me back, grounds me, reminds me to let them be kids and that they will learn through that process as well. The next book I shared with you guys on my winter reading list, and that is Troublemaker by Leah Remini. This is her autobiography, her story of how her family became involved in Scientology. It was first her mother who introduced it to her and her sister, and then they sort of chose that life. Their mom sort of chose it for them because they were in their early teens, and how she sort of, how she worked her way up in the church to where she finally turned around and said, wait a minute, there's something really wrong here. You see a really deep inside look into, she never felt like she was doing enough. She would check all the boxes, she would do all the things, but she always had questions. And so she was labeled a troublemaker because she was not a go with the flow kind of girl. She would do what she was told, and she would follow the steps of the church, and she very much so believed in this journey that the church was taking her on. But she had a lot of questions about how the leadership was structured, about the buy-in, the financial buy-in, the time investment. There's a huge time investment, which I didn't realize. If you're working your way up in these levels, there's like a 2-hour a night investment. She would go straight from the set to studying at the church every night, what she sacrificed as far as being a parent and being a spouse. And then when she finally realized she wasn't ready to sacrifice anymore, it kind of sort of all came to a head at a very, very famous, highly publicized wedding. She was questioning a lot about what she saw, and she shares a lot about what she saw as an insider of the church and how she has been labeled as a troublemaker because she came out to the public and sort of exposed all the inner workings. Very interesting read. It's one that's been on my list for a long time. If you have any interest in the Scientology church, I would give this one a look, just to kind of get an insider's point of view. The next 2 books I read were young adult fiction, and I don't even care because they were really good. I saw this one listed, somebody was reading it as a read aloud in their Instagram account, and it's The Year of Miss Agnes. My daughter has read it before. I had never read it. It's the story of Miss Agnes, and she comes to teach at a small Alaskan town. I think it's set about the 1940s, 50s, And they've always had a different teacher every year. Teachers can't ever stick it out because of the hardships of living there. But this is told from a young 10-year-old girl's perspective of how they sort of fell in love with her. She was so different from everybody else, very much so in that wild and free, brave writer type of philosophy. She would come in and share music, and they would learn geography through maps, and how these kids didn't even realize that there was such a bigger, broader world out there until she would lay out a map before them, and they would talk about the places in the books, and they were learning to read. And she brought in books besides those beginning readers because they were boring for the kids, and she wanted them to love reading and to love learning, and just the way she sparked their imagination and their joy. It's a very short book, just over 100 pages, and written at about a probably 4th or 5th grade level, so I finished that one in 2 days. Very cute, would make an excellent read aloud. I think I might encourage my 4th grader to read that one next. The next book I read was Sweet Home Alaska, followed along in the exact same vein. I had already started this one when I picked this one up and read it in 2 days. This one is written, I would say, probably early 1930s maybe. They talk a lot about, it's a family that comes from Wisconsin, and they have pretty much lost everything, but dad doesn't want public assistance. So when they lose their opportunity to start to be a part of this colony in Alaska, the daughter applies for him. It's a government program that ends up sending them there, and it's for families who need a fresh start. They're farmers. They end up going to Alaska. It's the mom and dad, and they have 4 kids. And you see this story through the oldest daughter's perspective. She's about 12 or 13. This is told in a very similar way to Little House on the Prairie, although you've of course advanced a good 60 to 70 years. So the attitude is not quite as innocent as Laura Ingalls, but a lot of the same elements are there. The pioneer spirit, the man against nature, the building of community, and the community always coming together. At first she really doesn't want to go because they don't know anybody else who is going with this particular colony, but the way the community comes around and teaches each other and supports each other and helps each other. She and a group of friends start and go in and start to build a library for this town, and how the whole town sort of develops from a hodgepodge of families into a real community. Very good book. I would say this would be written to probably a 6th grade level. My daughter and I have both read it. I don't think there's anything questionable in it, which is great for me as a mom. It's a hard thing to find junior high, early high school books without questionable content. This one was really easy. I wouldn't be worried about handing this one off to my kids. And the last 2 books were our read alouds for the month of January. Typically we only finish 1 read aloud in a month, but I was so excited about this first one that we absolutely tore through it. We have been studying World War I, and so we picked up War Horse. This is by Michael Purgo, and this is a story told in the perspective of the horse. This is Joey, who finally comes to love this young man, Albert, and Albert earns his trust. They work on the farm together. He's a very well-bred horse, but he's been bought to be a farm horse. So he works the plow and comes to just love this young boy. Well, then he is sold off by the father to go to war. And it's his story of, first he falls in love with the captain. I can't remember the captain's name. He starts to trust the captain. Well, then the captain dies because of course it's a war story, and it's about all these different people that are part of his life. At one point he has another horse that they are the 2 companions. They're the 2 most well-bred horses in the army, and then he loses that companion, and how each of these people brings something different to his life just at the time that he needs it. And so it's all about the people that he meets and the people that help him keep going and how he helps them keep going. And ultimately his goal is to get back to Albert and be reunited. Very good story. Gives the kids a great glimpse into really the hardships of war without going too deep or too graphic. Since we finished that one a lot faster than usual, we then picked up The Night Journey. This is by Catherine Noski, and this is a story of a young lady who escapes from Russia with her family during a time when Jews were being killed off by the Tsar. So this is Nana Sashi, and she is in her 90s now, and she tells her story to her great-granddaughter, Rach. And so you bounce back and forth between Rach's life as a 13-year-old and Nana Sashi's life as a 12, 13-year-old, and what was happening with her. She goes in every night and her grandmother tells her her story. And so she sees the juxtaposition between what her life is now and what her grandmother's life was like and how hard it was for them. And they make this journey to escape in the middle of the night. They have people along the way that help them. Some of the most unlikely characters, people that you wonder if they're going to turn on the family, but ultimately what a risk it took for them to cross the border. And it's a good glimpse, again, into history. I pull a lot of our books with what we're studying with history. It's a good glimpse into seeing some of the tragedies of just the battles between ethnicities, and at the time how the Tsar was really going after the Jews. This one did take a little bit of personal editing. I wouldn't say that there was necessarily questionable situations. Some of the language a little bit was questionable, and I think that there was maybe one scene that I edited a little bit. My 7th grader could probably be okay with it. It would bring out some discussion, but I just wasn't ready for some of the things for my 4th grader. However, it is one of those topics that you don't always talk about, how people were after the Jews, and so for that reason it handles that subject well, and so I would recommend this one. So let's talk about what's next. For myself personally, I've already started 2 books. I tend to have 2 books going at a time. The first one is Last Child in the Woods, and the second one is Parenting Teens with Love and Logic. These are both on my winter reading list, which I will link down below. And as far as our read aloud, we are reading Shadow on the Mountain. This goes into the World War II time period in Norway. Like I said, I love picking read alouds that will bring history alive for my kids. I've never read this one before. We're 1 chapter in today, and I'm ready for more. So that's all the books that we read in the month of January. I'm going to link a few videos down below, some book reading videos, my winter reading list. I'm also going to link my Goodreads account down below so you can check that out if you want to follow along. Leave me a comment below sharing with me what you are reading. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye guys.